On tonight's episode of Verse to the Verse, strap in as we take a ride down to the mean streets of Winterhaven, Florida to visit the Harold Blake case. On the morning of August 12, 2002, Mike Patel was shot and killed as he stood inside the glass doors of a convenience store called Dale's Go-Mart that he owned and operated in Winterhaven, Florida. The store's video surveillance camera partially captured the shooting. The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the chest. Witnesses testified that on August 12, 2002, about 6 a.m., they heard a gunshot and saw a black male run and enter a light-colored car parked in front of the store. A detective found the car abandoned a little over a mile away, and a K-9 tracked its scent from the car to a building in the Lake Deer Apartments. At the time, Teresa Jones was living in the complex with her children and her boyfriend, Richard Green. At about 7 or 7:10 that morning, Richard Green, Kevin Key, and Blake came to Teresa's home. She took Key to the store and Blake to the Scottish Inn where he was staying. On the way, they stopped by a light-colored car on the side of the road, and Blake removed 2 guns from it. Blake told Teresa he had shot someone. Blake took the guns with him. Later the same day, Blake told Demetrius Jones that he, Green, and Key were attempting a robbery and someone was shot. Blake asked Demetrius to dispose of a gun, and Demetrius agreed to attempt to sell it. However, Blake did not give Demetrius the gun. At around 6 or 7 p.m. that night, Green gave Demetrius a 9mm handgun, and they attempted to sell it, but no one bought it. Later that night, or earlier the next morning, Green threw the gun in a nearby lake. On August 14th, Detective Lewis and Ivan interviewed Richard Green. Green took the officers to the apartment where Blake was located, and Blake was arrested without incident. Blake began talking as soon as Ivan and Lewis and the deputies placed him in the car. Lewis read Blake his rights on the way to the station. When they arrived, they placed Blake in an interview room with hidden audio and video equipment. They did not reread his Miranda rights or have him sign a waiver. Lewis and another officer interviewed Blake. Blake said he stole a vehicle and then met Green and an unknown black male. He initially said he sold the car and was not involved with the Patel shooting. Blake then said all 3 of us would get charged, made a statement about the death penalty, and began to cry. He admitted that they went to the store to commit a robbery. Blake said he was in the back seat and had a 9mm handgun and a .38 caliber revolver. All 3 of the men got out of the car, and Blake had the 9mm handgun. When Patel made a sudden movement and tried to lock the door, Blake shot him. Lewis then asked Blake to give an audio tape statement. Blake did not agree to taping the statement, but said he would detail the events one more time. The officers decided to videotape the statement anyway. As seen on videotape, Blake said he stole a car and picked up Richard Green, who was with an unknown male. Green drove to the store. The men walked up to the door of the store. Blake carried a gun with his finger on the trigger. As they approached the store, Patel scared him, and Blake shot him with the 9mm handgun. Blake claimed that it was an accident. However, it was intended to be a warning shot. Blake acknowledged he had been treated well and that Lewis had read him his rights in the car. Blake was indicted for first-degree murder, attempted armed robbery, and grand theft of an automobile. At trial, he testified in his own defense. He admitted that he stole the car, but claimed that when the trio arrived at the store, he stayed in the car and heard gunshots. He claimed the entire incident was against his will. After the pending phase trial, the jury unanimously recommended a sentence of death for the murder conviction. The trial court held a Spencer versus State hearing and then imposed the recommended sentence. The trial court found that 3 aggravating factors were applicable to the murder. First, Blake had been previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the threat of violence. A first-degree murder and attempted robbery committed in early August 2002. Great weight. 2, Blake was previously convicted of a felony and under sentence of imprisonment or placed on community control or on felony probation, some weight. 3rd, Blake was engaged in an attempt to commit the crime of armed robbery merged with commission of financial gain. That's moderate weight. The court found 1 statutory mitigator, the defendant's age at the time of the offense, which is moderate weight, and 7 non-statutory mitigating factors. Blake behaved appropriately in the courtroom. Blake never displayed violence in the presence of his family, was a good son, and formed a loving relationship with his family. Blake was remorseful. Blake cooperated with deputies at the time of arrest. Now, his co-defendant, Richard Green, was sentenced to life imprisonment. And Blake had no prior violent felony convictions, except for the first-degree murder and attempted robbery that Blake committed 2 weeks prior to shooting Patel. Blake would adjust to confinement and pose no danger to the outside community if incarcerated for life. Blake raised 3 issues on direct appeal. The trial court erred in denying Blake's motion to suppress his statement to law enforcement officers on the basis that the secret recording rendered the statement involuntary. The trial court erred in failing to advise him of his right to self-representation, and his death sentence is not proportionate. This court concluded that Blake's claims was without merit and that the evidence was sufficient enough to support his murder conviction. In 2009, Blake filed a motion for post-conviction relief, which he twice amended. In his second amended motion, Blake raised the following claims. The first, Blake was denied due process in the post-conviction proceedings as a result of errors by the trial court and defense counsel. 2, trial counsel failed to adequately investigate the defense case and challenge the state's case during the guilt phase. 3, the state withheld exculpatory evidence in violation and presented misleading evidence. 4, trial counsel failed to adequately investigate the defense case and challenge the state's case during the penalty phases. The prosecutor made improper comments, and trial counsel was ineffective for failing to object to the comments. Due to trial counsel's errors, Blake was denied his right under Act versus Oklahoma. The state violated Blake's right due to process by utilizing inconsistent theories, and trial counsel was ineffective for failing to object to the inconsistent theories. Newly discovered evidence establishes that Blake's first-degree murder conviction and death sentence are improper. The trial court erred by allowing evidence of Blake's prior felony, and trial counsel was ineffective for failing to object to the evidence. Blake's death sentence is improper because the state relied on non-statutory aggravation, and defense counsel was ineffective for failing to object. Blake's right to confrontation was violated, and trial counsel was ineffective for failing to object. and accumulative error deprived Blake of a fair trial. After conducting an evidentiary hearing, the post-conviction court entered an order that denied Blake's motion to the extent that it requested a new guilt phase and granted Blake's motion to the extent that it requested a new penalty phase. In his appeal, Blake argues that the post-conviction court erred by denying Blake's motion to disqualify Assistant Attorney John Arrow and the Office of the State's Attorney for the 10th Judicial Circuit his motion for discovery as it pertained to Aguero and his motion for sanctions, his claim that trial counsel was ineffective, his claim that the state violated Brady, his claim that the state presented misleading evidence, his claim that newly discovered evidence established that his conviction was unreliable, and his claim that he was denied his rights under AIC. In addition, Blake filed a petition asserting that he was denied a fair trial due to the service of a partial juror in the trial, and an appellate counsel provided ineffective assistance regarding that juror. The prosecutor committed misconduct, and an appellate counsel was ineffective for failing to challenge the misconduct. The state's use of inconsistent theories violated Blake's right to the due process, and appellate counsel was ineffective for not raising these issues. And Blake was denied his rights under AIC, and appellate counsel erred by not raising that issue. In June 2012, the post-conviction court denied Blake's motion to disqualify, therefore keeping him on death row. And this concludes tonight's episode of Worst of the Worst. I'm your host, Marlo, signing off. And remember, depending on the crime, you can get the needle or the chair. Until next time, please take care.